In the workings of this book, I often try to think about what some of the arguments against some of my positions would be. The main one that I can really think of is the ideas, or the argument might be, I am under valuing or underestimating, that's probably a better word, the use of systemic barriers that are made to either reinforce the imposter syndrome or whatever. But the thing is, I'm not. I'm not downplaying those factors. But what I am is repositioning those factors. By that I mean, I have a totally different philosophical starting point than most of the literature that's already out there. So, as of now, from what I've read, the dissertation that I'm reading right now might prove to be a little bit different. But what's really out there now is the reliance on outside systems to be more inclusive, to be more welcoming. The reason that African Americans in particular are dealing with the imposter syndrome because there's a lack of representation of African Americans within that particular profession or whatever it is. And that is an external locus of control. Putting the full responsibility for you to feel included or have a sense of belonging in any space. This cat keep on jumping on me. Is putting it on them. And I understand that to a degree because we want systemic changes for, better equity of diverse people in high places or whatever the case is. But my philosophical standpoint is almost, I'm not even gonna say almost, is literally the opposite of that position. Whereas my position is more internal locus of control. If we can control all of the things that we can control, then we can face the things that we can't control with more confidence. And that's what the imposter syndrome ultimately does, is that it eats away at the person's confidence. It eats away at the person's self-regard, self-concept, and all of these things. And this is pretty much the crux of the book, is that in and of itself, that self-doubt, that lack of self-love and lack of self-regard and lack of self-concept, that was the root of the purpose behind the imposter syndrome. It might not have been called that. This is where the systemic argument does carry some merit, because these perceptions of black being lesser, black being evil, black being this, black being whatever it is lower than white, is what fueled much of the American culture. But the most one can do is influence. The person still has autonomy enough to either agree with the narrative or disagree with the narrative. So what my position is look, let's reposition ourselves in a sense that no matter what the environment looks like, we have an inner self-regard, an inner self-concept, an inner self-confidence, that we are able to step into any environment and know that we belong, know that we're full human beings, know that we deserve to be there, because that self-affirmation comes from within. It doesn't come from without. You can't HR yourself into self-confidence. It just doesn't work that way. And if we continue to push that narrative, it's going to continue to push our people into a weaker position. This is when I juxtapose the stories of like W.E.B. Du Bois, Booker T. Washington, Carter G. Woodson, especially Carter G. Woodson, the miseducation of the Negro. And I'm paraphrasing here, but he says, like, when you control a man's thinking, you don't have to tell him to go to the back door. He'll go to the back door on his own. And if there's not a door in the back, he will create a door because his education made that so. So we've been fed a narrative. We've been fed misinformation. We've been fed miseducation about ourselves and our abilities. And so since that came from systemic forces, many of us feel that systemic forces must be the ones that have to re-educate to get us into the position that we have confidence in ourselves again. But that's the lie. That's the racist part of it, because racism's main tactic is distraction. So you're spending all your time trying to get people to change their HR codes or whatever the case is for you to feel better about yourself, when you could just feel better about yourself. That's it, period. Yeah, it might be hard. Yeah, it might take years of re-education and retraining of yourself, but this is a self audit that one has to do, because the imposter phenomenon, or the imposter syndrome in layman's terms, is a self-fulfilling prophecy. Everything deals with the self, that sense of self, the perception of self. So if you are able to then recontrol your perception of yourself, no matter what the environment is, then you can be yourself no matter what that environment actually is. Because you got to ask yourself, why do we feel confident in certain arenas that are deemed black than we do in other areas that are not deemed black? We're still a minority in the nation. We're still, 13% minority in the nation. So we can't continue to use representation or whatever to be the sole fuel for us to feel that that we can do something. The reason that we embrace athletics so much is because, the majority of the NBA, NFL, and all that good stuff is black. So we feel more comfortable, that's a black person thing to do. But in the grand scheme of overall representation in the United States, we're still a minority. So when people say black people only make up a few percent of this or a few percent of that, I'm like, fam, it's okay. Because how many people in general are already interested in STEM? Passionate about it enough to get higher degrees in it. That's already a small subset of people. But if you juxtapose the population of America versus these people that might be interested in STEM, it's going to be swayed their way because they have a overall more representation in the nation, period. And then the percentage of African Americans that might be interested in STEM is going to be lower. Just based off of the numbers. Just based off of interest. So don't even fret to the point that there's not that much representation or not as equal a representation as this is or that. It is what it is. My position is, you got to be purpose-driven. Purpose-driven enough to do whatever it is that you feel like you need to do and have the courage to do it. Otherwise, you're going to be a basketball player that should have been a scientist. And the world is going to be that less intelligent because you chose that route. Maybe you got to be the trailblazer for more of a percentage of people to consider STEM fields or whatever fields, librarianship or teaching or whatever the case is. but we're already a smaller number of the distribution of these things that take higher mental utility to get into anyway. So don't even trip about that. And the way that I juxtapose our history is that we have ancestors that has done magnificent things in STEM and librarianship, all these other places that we are such a small number in. We have ancestors and elders that have already paved the way of going into these fields. So look at their story and apply that knowledge, apply that courage, apply that grit, apply that self-regard into your own self as you go and take on the same challenges that they did. Many of which happened decades ago in systems where racism was more overt than it is today. We're not doing anybody any good thinking, acting, speaking like today in 2025 is like 1955. That's a lie.